What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 12 of the Feb4 Sports Show. I am your host, Tom Nicita, and we are bringing you a special inside version of the sports show today, pretty much because our shooting location is essentially flooded. Rain, hell or shine, we do what we can to get the episode out, so hopefully you enjoy it and you can bear with us with the visual and audio difficulties. It was a massive week in sport. Even with no Premier League action on, we've obviously got Wimbledon and other things to dive into, so let's jump straight into it and get into it. Firstly, recapping the NRL over the weekend without getting into the actual games. There were two big things that came out of the NRL over the weekend. For me, number one was the refereeing problems and how shit the refereeing was. We've come up with a few kind of different reasons as to why the refereeing seems to be going so poorly at the moment. This happens one or two times a season where, the fans start saying, the refs are refereeing poorly and whatever. And then there's usually a quick change made, and that then ends up, fixing whatever errors there may be. I think that personally, these refereeing errors are coming up because the game is becoming quicker. But I think it's also due to a number of other factors, such as, more technology. We've got 20 or 30 different camera angles of every different shot now, and it just makes it so much easier to critique. And also with the captain's challenge, we get to see a play 3 or 4 times over and over and over again, and that can make it quite hard. But yes, the refereeing in the NRL has been pretty poor over the past weekend, and I think officiating really, to be honest, dictated the result of 2 games. So refereeing was one big point, and the second big point we obviously saw today. Today is Monday. We saw the Queensland Maroons and the New South Wales Blues named their Game 3 Origin Decider squads. Both teams, respectively, only made one change to each Game 2 squad. We saw with the Queensland Maroons, they unfortunately had to drop Felice Kafusi due to a family issue. And we also saw the New South Wales Blues have to drop Payne Haas due to injury. He's injured his shoulder. And basically, from that, I think that there are 2 really big talking points. Number one, the Blues elected to pick Jordan McLean over Regan Campbell-Gillard or David Clemmer, who their other 2 options. And to me, I didn't really agree with that. Picking a debutant to play Game 3 and the biggest game of the State of Origin, it's a really weird call for me. He hasn't experienced the pace of the game. He hasn't experienced the intensity of the game. And to then, yes, Jordan McLean is, in his 30s and he has experience, but to give him that kind of game, in the biggest game of the series, it was really a shocking, really a weird pick for me. And, I would have definitely been picking Regan Campbell-Gillard. I actually thought he had a really good game 1 personally, Regan. And, I think that he's built for these kinds of games. His go for it, his agility, his pace in the forwards, I think it's really underrated. So he would have been my pick to replace Payne Haas. And obviously for the Queensland Maroons, Jeremiah Nanai replacing Felice Kafusi. It's a stat that's kind of been swept under the rug a little bit, but the defensive lapse on the right-hand side for the Queensland Maroons, we've seen Dane Gagai already miss 17 tackles in the first 2 games of State of Origin, which is ridiculous for a centre. We've also seen Selwyn Cobbo miss 6 or 7 himself as well. And Jeremiah Nanai is just slotting into that Felice Kafusi position as well. I really don't think that that's going to strengthen defensively at all. I think Kafusi is one of his best assets is his defence. And the fact that a young, very inexperienced Jeremiah Nanai is coming into that position, I think that will leave a lot to target for the New South Wales Blues. All right, and this week in the NRL, talking about the biggest games, obviously we couldn't start without recapping the Manly and Melbourne game. Manly won 36-30. To be honest, Manly were all over Melbourne. They were way, way, way better than them. It was just, a really late surge from Melbourne scoring 3 tries in about 5 minutes to kind of make the scoreline look a little bit closer. But to be honest, I don't think it's good enough from Melbourne. Yes, they do have Cameron Munster out and they do have a few injuries in their squad. But I just think that they've got enough quality in there to still be competing with teams regardless of, how good Manly Sea Eagles are or not. And, the fact that they also have Ryan Pappenhausen, Jerome Hughes and Harry Grant and Brandon Smith all still injury-free, I think that should be enough to carry them through. Good teams can win games even when they have a few of their good players out. And to be honest, for Melbourne to not win that, and at least, not be competitive for 75 minutes of that game was pretty poor from them. I can't say that they're one of the 2 best teams in the NRL right now. Yes, basing that off one result is too much, but, I don't think that they did themselves any favours there. On to the Panthers versus the Roosters. I actually really enjoyed watching this game. This was my favourite game of the round. And, the only downfall for me was the refereeing. I don't think the Chooks would have won or, it would have been, pretty close. But I think that the referees just had too much to do with it. And I think that kind of dictated the result in the end. I thought the Chooks were great. They kind of showed that more cohesion and, that consistency that we've been talking about in games. I thought Joey Manu was really, really good in 5'8". I enjoyed seeing him there. And, I thought that the Panthers were good, but, they were just playing a team that was just up for it and, just as good as them, to be honest. And, with more down the line or more in the middle refereeing, I think that game could have gone either way. To me, it worries me a little bit now that the Roosters have moved into 10th. I still think that they are going to clinch a top 8 position, but, they are playing the best team in the comp. And, to have put up that big of a performance, I'm really not too worried about their table positioning right now. I think that they still will clinch that 7th or 8th seed come the end of the season. Speaking of consistency, let's get on to the two most inconsistent teams in the comp. We've got the Rabbitohs versus the Eels. The Rabbitohs absolutely embarrassed the Eels this weekend. And, to be honest, yes, the Eels had 15 more missed tackles than the Rabbitohs, but they just didn't look like they wanted to be out there. I thought the outside backs were poor, and the errors between the backline, in particular Wanga, Blake, Will Penasini and Dylan Brown, it was just too much for the Eels to even get themselves into the game. And it just leaves me wondering at the end of each time the Eels play, what's going on there? They seem to never be consistent until they play a top 4 team, but they usually challenge them and, often pick up wins. But I just don't know where to go for the Eels now. I think that they need a change in leadership, whether it's from Mitch Moses, Clint Gutherson or Brad Arthur. I think that they do need a change of leadership in that core, and, only time will tell to see who they go with. But to be honest, for me, I don't like seeing coaches sacked, but I think that it may be Brad Arthur come the end of the season. And the only other game that I want to talk about from the weekend is the Battle of the Queenslanders, or the two good Queensland teams, I should say. And that was the Cowboys beating the Broncos 40-26. Although that scoreline would suggest that the Cowboys absolutely smacked them, I actually really enjoyed this game of footy. I thought that the Broncos showed a hell of a lot of fight too. It was one of those things that we were talking about at the start of the season where the Broncos fans don't need to see their team winning the comp. They just wanted to see more heart and more fight. And we saw that, I think that the Broncos have a lot of injured players right now, and they also have players who are playing through niggles that would probably keep him out. They've obviously got Herbie Farnworth, Tyson Gamble, who are both out, and Payne Haas, who has been playing through apparently two torn AC joints or two injured AC joints. So asking that much from a few of their players who are battling through injury right now, they're showing a hell of a lot of fight, and it's really good to see from the Broncos. They are sitting in 5th right now, and I think if they can hang on to that top 8 position for another few more weeks, come the back end of the season, I think that they'll be right for the finals. And of course, we have to talk about the other team in that battle, the Cowboys. I just love the way the Cowboys are built. I don't think anyone at the start of the season saw this kind of team emerging like they have at the moment. I just love the young core, particularly in the forwards that the Cowboys have at the moment. They only have one forward over the age of 30, and everyone else is still young, firing, athletic and fit. On that point, I think that their forward pack is one of the most athletic forward packs in the game. Everyone has pace, everyone's big, everyone gives a massive amount of effort. And to be honest, everyone bar maybe Cohen Hess can give you 80-minute efforts. So I'm loving what I'm seeing from the Cowboys at the moment. And, how can you also talk about the Cowboys without talking about some of their informed backs? They have Val Holmes, who's ridiculously informed right now, Murray Tuolungi, and my pick for the Dally M fullback of the year, Scott Drinkwater. I think that he has been absolutely on fire, and he just continues to keep putting in effort after effort and performance after performance. Look, I don't see the Cowboys winning the comp, but I think that right now they are the second best team in the NRL, and I really don't think anyone's close to them. A sport that we don't often talk about, the Wimbledon. I think that Wimbledon has been a big talking point this week, not just internationally, but particularly in Australia. So why am I talking about the tennis? Well, there's two reasons. Number one, Rafa Nadal, the GOAT. Currently, he's moving on to the round of 16. I think he's playing tonight, actually, being a Monday today. And he's currently paying $5 to win the Wimbledon. Now, look, everyone's going to be backing Djokovic, and I don't blame them for that. He's great on grass. But if Rafa wins this comp, I don't know how many years he has left, but I think if he wins this, he goes on to be the undoubted GOAT in professional tennis. And, I love watching Rafa play, so he's one of the reasons why I'm watching and talking about this right now. And the second reason I'm talking about the tennis, well, Nick Kyrgios. A lot of tennis fans complain about Nick Kyrgios, saying, he's too much drama, he complains too much, he creates too much kind of recklessness. And, all fans ask for is a personality of someone, who can change or challenge the status quo. And, that's what Nick Kyrgios does. Granted, yes, he can carry on a little bit, but, often he's challenging calls that, are actually wrong, or he's challenging, norms that are made, For example, we saw Tsitsipas hit a ball into the crowd and it hit a spectator. And Novak Djokovic actually got banned for doing the same thing. And, Kyrgios was just sitting there asking the question why Tsitsipas isn't banned. And could you imagine if Nick Kyrgios hit a ball into the stands and hit a fan? He'd be, not only would he be suspended for 2 or 3 tournaments, but he'd be fined millions. So Nick Kyrgios, I love you. Keep doing you, baby. And bring this Wimbledon title home for not only Australia, but for you. And finally, the other major sport that really caught my eye was the UFC. I love the UFC. I'm an avid fan, and to see an Aussie and a Kiwi both win their titles respectively was really good to see. I think firstly, Alex Volkanovski, there is no doubt in my mind that he is the featherweight GOAT. Everyone was saying that either Jose Aldo or Max Holloway were the GOATs, and not only has he beaten both of them, he's beaten Max Holloway 3 times, and over this past weekend, he beat him convincingly. To me, he's not only the GOAT in the featherweight division, but he is also right now the pound-for-pound best fighter in the UFC. Yes, including Kamaru Usman. I think he's shown more adversity than Kamaru Usman, and he's fought tougher opponents. So for me, Alex Volkanovski is the current pound-for-pound GOAT in the UFC, and I can't wait to watch him move up to 155 and hopefully win the double champ status. And the second biggest talking point from the UFC over the weekend was everyone calling Israel Adesanya boring after his victory over Jared Cannonier. If you're a UFC fan, you can't call that fight boring. Grow the fuck up if you are, because Israel Adesanya is the champion. He needs to be doing what he needs to do to continue to retain the title. And it's up to the opposers and the challengers who are versing him to really try to get him out of his comfort zone. And to be honest, if you're Israel Adesanya getting paid $3 million a fight and you can stand back and just piece blokes up without taking too much damage, why the fuck wouldn't you? It's not up to the champion to put his title on the line. It's up for the challengers to try to take that title. And to be honest, Israel Adesanya, he's the best striker in the UFC right now. Why the fuck wouldn't he sit on the outside and win his title and make his money? Israel Adesanya's opponents choose not to engage with him purely because he is so skillful and technical. So that's not on Israel Adesanya. He is still easily the best striker in the UFC. So now on to one of our newer segments, 3 burning questions. Our first question comes from TikTok, and we got asked, is the game becoming too fast for the refs to maintain quality and consistency? So on my points before, number 1, I think that because there are so many different camera angles, it is really easy to scrutinise the referees. But I think number 2, there are also so many interpretations of certain rules. As we saw with Isaiah Papali'i on the weekend, he pushed Lockie Ilias while Lockie Ilias was kicking. And a lot of people were comparing it to a shoulder charge and all that kind of thing. And I don't get how, as a forward, you can make a massive tackle and drive someone into the ground, but you can't push them. To me, I think that there does need to be a lot clearer instructions for the referees. And I think that having someone with infographics who can project a rule and its interpretation on the screen during the games will just help the casual viewers understand the calls a little bit more and take a little bit more heat off the referees. Second question, again, comes from TikTok, and that was, does Latrell Mitchell make any team a contender? Now, to me, no, he does not make any team a contender. I think he's an X factor. I think he has an unbelievable skill level and, just an athletic freak. But I don't think he makes any team just a certain contender. I do think that you can game plan around him. I think that you can build an offense around him, definitely. However, I just don't think that Latrell has the consistency for me to be able to say that you can put him on any team and they automatically become a contender. And the third question came from cameraman Rudy, and that was, how would I solve the Titans' problems right now? So obviously the Titans are sitting, at the bottom of the table in the wooden spoon position. And to be honest, I don't think that they can have any fixes to their current season right now. I think that their biggest problems lie in a few things. Number 1, they signed so many players to massive bullshit contracts. We saw Ash Taylor get over $1 million a season, and he was completely unproven in the NRL. We also saw Bryce Cartwright get a very similar deal, and he wasn't really proven in the NRL either. I think he'd only been playing for 2 or 3 seasons. So I think that getting rid of the bullshit contracts is one. I think that they also need more experience in the halves and in the forwards. Obviously, they've got Kieran Foran coming next year, so that's really going to help them. But at the same time, you've got a 33-year-old Kieran Foran coming into the team who is ridiculously injury-prone. So I don't think that's going to solve all their issues, but I definitely think it's a step in the right direction. I also don't think Toby Sexton is, the quality halfback to take the club forward. I think that they really need to try to breed some juniors, get a stronger development system going up there. Again, that takes a lot of time, but get a stronger development system going up there and then hopefully bring in, stronger halves and forwards, to take their club into the future. So our road to 10K multi, fuck me. I brought in someone externally, one of the best punters I know. And, he lost on his first leg with Manly in Melbourne. I think 99% of footy fans were tipping Melbourne, so I'm not going to hold that one against him. But, I just don't know who to trust anymore. I don't know where to turn. However, I had a great $150 win on the UFC on the weekend off only $10. So, I'm going to back myself again. I'm going to go for gold here. I've put a 3-leg multi together that I'm hoping is going to be the stepping stone in order for us to reach our 10K. My picks are the Rabbitohs to beat the Knights on Friday night footy, the Brisbane Lions to beat Essendon Bombers in the AFL, and Carlton to beat West Coast in the AFL. All of those legs combined will give you $2.46 on Ladbrokes with Odds Boost. So $10 on that brings you a $24.60 total. And in 10 weeks' time, it's also going to bring you 10K. So why the fuck not throw some money on it? Thanks for tuning in to the Feb4 Sports Show, episode 12.